Wedding planning can be stressful and overwhelming, but there should be joy in the process. Sharon, we have a great episode, and we'll let Mike talk a little bit. But you've kind of come up with a name for this episode.
Yes, I want everybody out there to be BrideChilla, not BrideZilla.
Love it. Mike, what do you think?
I agree with her 100%.
Can't be having
We
no
like Chilla brides, not
Zilla brides.
Right. So in this episode, we've got some helpful tips to get out of the overwhelming feeling and back to enjoying the wedding planning. Now, we can't fix everything. We wish we could. But we have some tips to help you along the way. So Sharon, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Just in my experience working with brides and grooms, honestly, they tend to get so overwhelmed because when you just look at the year before a wedding and every single thing that has to be done, it is very, very overwhelming. There are a ton of details. But I have found, and I think Mike has also found, several things that you can do along the way to not let anything steal the joy from you. And you want this to be a fun process. You want to include family and friends.
Mike, I know what she's going to talk about. Do you know what she's going to talk about?
I think so.
Planning. Is that right, Sharon? Planning. Having a plan, right?
Having a plan and
It's Sharon's favorite
That
thing.
is her favorite.
Yes.
having a realistic plan.
And I like what Mike mentioned right before we went to record this. He mentioned about things that are most important to the bride and groom. And I think that's really important as well. So where do we start, Sharon? Where do we begin this?
Well, I think wedding planning, and I tell my couples this a lot, it's like when you were a kid and you played red light, green light. Maybe I'm old and maybe nobody plays that anymore, but red light, green light, because
Could you explain what that is?
it's a game and you run and then somebody goes red light and you freeze. And then they go green light and then
And
you
they
go.
run.
And then they go red light and then you freeze. So like if you are still in motion after they say red light, then you're out.
I cannot wait. Make sure you look up this episode on YouTube while Sharon was demonstrating that. You
Let's
won't
play
want to
that. You
miss
want
it.
to?
So
Okay, it's like red light, green light.
reel it in. We're reeling it back in.
Reel it in.
So the reason I say it's like red light, green light is when you initially get engaged and you get all excited about your planning, first of all, take a beat, enjoy being engaged.
Show off that ring.
Yeah.
Tell all your family and friends.
There's no reason to call and hire a wedding planner that night, even though, if you wanted to, I hope you call me. But
on that note, though, if there's one that you know you want to use, whether they've been referred to you, someone in your family's used them, that really needs to be one of your first calls.
Very first call.
it
actually.
should be your first
Doesn't have to
call.
be the day you get engaged or the day after.
I have a client right now who actually told me when she wanted to get married and told me that she wanted me to be her wedding planner and to pencil her in on that date before she got engaged because she knew it was coming. So that happens a lot.
Smart bride.
But there's going to be, enjoy that moment, enjoy being engaged. If you have the budget for a wedding planner, I, of course, strongly suggest that you call, that be one of your first calls, because that wedding planner can then direct you in what your next steps should be, in what order you should do everything. But the reason I say it's like red light, green light is there's a ton of stuff to do in the very beginning because you want to get those vendors booked so that you have that A team that we talk about all the time. You have the best of the best. And vendors that fit your personality and fit your budget. You want to make sure you get your vendors booked. Then there's going to be a little lull where there's not so much to do. And then about 6 months out come the tastings and, the floral appointments and all that stuff. So it is a little bit like playing red light, green light. My grandma used to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's how you plan a wedding. So don't try to overwhelm yourself with doing everything at once and looking at this huge checklist of everything that needs to be done.
Mike, I want to talk about something on this note. One of the things that I think can help people out, especially in the beginning of this process, if there are vendors that you know without a doubt that this is going to be part of my vendor team, you have to reach out to them because dates are going quickly. Not that that's anything new, but there's a lot of people playing catch up. So making sure whether that is a florist, a venue, a makeup artist, your hairstylist, for example, and Sharon has mentioned this before. Number one, if you know that you want them on your team, but also if they're a one person show, if that they don't have a team.
Well, I mean, any vendor that you want, back to what Sharon said, very first, get your planner because they can help you start with all your vendors. When you book your vendors, I mean, your first vendor that you should concentrate on before anything, if you do not have a venue, is you concentrate on your venue. And I think we've mentioned this before, don't set your date, set your month. Don't
That's
set
so
your date,
important.
because then if you want a specific venue, let them tell you the date that they're available in the month that you want.
I've even heard some people saying about what season do you want,
Exactly,
not even necessarily
exactly,
the month,
exactly.
but your season.
So after you focus on getting your venue, then you start thinking about your dress colors, the bride's dress, because your venue is the most important. But there's a lot of details in, from after the venue comes in. But you get all those booked and you get them booked right away, and then everything else is going to fall into place.
And I would think that would help with some of the overwhelm, knowing that you're getting those people to build your A team, as you always refer to it, Sharon. That helps alleviate some of that stress to know, okay, I've got to sign a contract, my deposit is paid, not just necessarily a phone call and a person saying, yes, I'm available that date. Get it in writing with a deposit.
Correct.
Right. There's a huge sigh of relief knowing that your team is in place and that you got the people you want. I like to usually have a meeting, with each vendor before we sign a contract, just to make extra sure that it's a good fit. Not only for budget, but for personality, once again. So, maybe take a day, take a Thursday or whatever day works for you. Take a day off from work and say, I'm going to have all my vendor meetings this day. And that's what I do. You'll see it on my Google Calendar. It might say Sarah Day, because I know that day I'm going to sit with Sarah and we're going to just go boom, 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 and we're going to check off those vendors one at a time. We're going to go meet with all of them.
And that probably helps with people that want to be part of the process or that you want to help you with that process, whether it be your mom,
right,
or mother of the groom, whoever that may be.
Right. And, that's the way I like to do it. And that way, if someone isn't available or maybe after that meeting they're not a good fit, then I have time to move on to the next person. But again, those vendors you have your heart set on, maybe there's a band that you love, or you love Mike's Florals and you've always wanted him to do your wedding. Those are the ones we need to focus on first.
And it's never too early to call your vendors, but I'll be honest with you, right now, since we're so busy, especially going through the season, don't get frustrated if they don't return your call within a reasonable amount of time, because this is our busy season also. But it's never too early to go ahead and start thinking about a year out. Some vendors say 6 to
8 months.
8 months out. Me personally, I say a year out, because I'm loaded for next year already. So I want to go ahead and get you in there. But just keep in mind, after you do get your vendors all set back and remind yourself of why you are doing this anyway. Sometimes I feel like the bride and the groom, especially the bride and the bride's mom, gets lost in all the hustle and bustle.
It becomes a job
of everything that they're doing. Just stop and remind yourself at least once a week, why are we doing this? So that should help the overwhelming stuff. It is overwhelming, but you have to concentrate and enjoy it too.
When I first started, it used to be for a floral appointment, say. I would wait until the bride had purchased her dress and we had chosen bridesmaids' dresses, or at least chosen the color. But now, with the way vendors are booked, even if I don't know any of those things, especially, like with Lloyd's Floors, they're so busy that I will say, are you sure this is who you want? And if they tell me yes, then I want to go ahead and get that deposit paid and I want to get on their book. We can have our meeting later and go over colors and flower selection and that kind of thing. Same thing for a DJ. You love this DJ. We're going to get on their book. We will meet later and pick out songs, but we're going to get on the book. That's the main thing, is on the book.
Well, going back to florals, I know and you have learned this from me. I've always said, get your dress colors
Right.
picked out.
I don't do that
In
anymore.
today's circumstances, I mean, it is so important to get your vendors. The thing about it is, if you know that your color palette is going to be creams and whites and greenery, which 90% of my brides are like that. If that's, that's what your color palette is, go ahead and come in. Because, I mean, even this week, I've had people come in, they don't know their dress color. Well, that goes through me like a butcher knife.
You'll be fine.
But with everything going on now, and they wanting to go ahead and book for next year, it really doesn't matter what color dress they pick out, as long as they know their color palette for the flowers are going to be neutral.
Well, and honestly, I know you don't love to advertise this, but if they come in early and they get on the book, and maybe 2-3 months down the road they change their mind, they want different florals, they want different colors, then we can change it. But that wedding is on your book. Their spot is reserved.
And usually, though, when they want to change something, even if they do, it doesn't have to be dramatic. We may add one flower, like I know we have this one lady that come back in and she wanted some lavender added to it. So I mean, that's always an easy fix. But again, back to the main thing, you want to go ahead and get your vendors booked way in advance.
So Sharon, you mentioned red light, green light. So the initial thing of getting your vendors in place that you want, and then you mentioned a little bit of a lull that you might not have as much on your plate to deal with. As we get into the 6 month, down to the month before the wedding, is there things that you recommend people think about or try not to get overwhelmed with in that time period?
Again, I think it is doing, eating that elephant one bite at a time. Not thinking, oh my gosh, I have these 75 things to do. It's like, what do I need to do this week? And, one of the things that I do for my clients is I have created a checklist that, in my opinion, and, every planner's checklist will be a little different. In my opinion, it has every single thing that you need to do from 12 months out from wedding day down to 2 weeks out. The groom needs to get a haircut. Both of the couple need to get their teeth whitened. I mean, it's that detailed. We need to make sure the groom not only has a suit, but when did he buy his socks and his, belt and those kind of things. So get a detailed checklist. If you don't have a wedding planner, get one from Pinterest or somewhere. Something that can guide you, that you can work from. And then take it, what do I need to do this month? What do I need to do this week? And mix in some fun stuff with that. If I have had brides that really struggle with anxiety and they are getting so overwhelmed with it all. And I will say, we're going to take a time out. So we're not going to talk for a week. I want you guys to go on a date. And no wedding planning talk at all. And it just kind of gives them a refresh and lets them kind of remember, like Mike said, hey, I like this person. That's why we're doing this. Now I remember, because I've noticed guys get really saturated really fast with wedding planning. And sometimes for brides, it's all they want to talk about. So sometimes you need to take a little break.
That's really great advice. And we had Clancy on one of our past episodes, and she was so shocked that her and her fiance at the time, the week of their wedding, got to go out to dinner and have a date night, just to have that moment between themselves, before their wedding date. And she was, I can't put into words exactly, but that was so refreshing to them, is kind of how she worded it. It really let them kind of check in on themselves and just get prepared for the days ahead. So as we go into that month before the wedding, I know I want to get to the week of the wedding too, but that month before, we're talking about different levels of anxiety here and different levels of overwhelm. And like you said, it can be kind of a roller coaster with emotions. What do you got?
Well, what I'd like to say is the whole process is overwhelming. But going back to what you've said, Sharon, if you have a good team and they know what they're doing, they're professional, they're going to take it one step at a time, that they know what they're supposed to do, and the bride is not going to have to worry about it.
Well, yeah.
You've got to set realistic goals for yourself to make sure that you book the right vendors, and then let them take control of it and don't worry about it. Not saying that they shouldn't follow up with each of their vendors 2 weeks out. But if you follow up with them, make sure everybody's online, it's going to make it a lot smoother for you to make sure everything is perfect for that day.
The 4 to 6 weeks right before your wedding can be incredibly overwhelming and almost to the point of, I've had brides use the word scary, or it can be incredibly fun. So I have what I call my month out meetings. We're going to meet with catering, we're going to meet with floral, we're going to meet with DJ, we're going to meet with photographer, and we're going to do these month out meetings. Even though we've already met with that vendor, we're just going to make extra sure that we're on the same page. So brides start to get overwhelmed with counts being due and numbers being due.
And balances being paid.
Balances being paid.
That stresses them
So
out.
what you do is, you want to, okay, I'm just going to use floral since Mike's sitting across from me. You want to schedule that month out floral meeting. I'm going to go with you. We're going to sit down. We're going to say our guest count was 250. Now we're at 200. So we don't need as many guest tables. So we don't need as many centerpieces. Are there any colors you need to change? Is there anything, that you want to change? We're going to go back over. Maybe we've lost a bridesmaid along the way. Maybe we've added a reader and that reader needs a boutonniere. So it's just that little final check of everything. But those appointments should be fun because this is like the real deal. You're about to get married now. It's serious business. And it should be fun for you. But it's just like, and I use the coaching analogy all the time because my kids were such big athletes and that was our whole life. But if you've done your work for the last few months leading up to wedding month, then this is all automatic. If you've planned and you've done what you should have done all along, then this is all automatic and it should not be stressful. We're going to go to catering. We're going to do that last catering appointment. We were at 250. Now we're at 200. So I'm going to take 50 plates off. Here's my seating chart. Here's my meal selections. Easy peasy.
It's really like a double check, or just kind of a once over
Right.
almost. Go ahead, Mike.
As soon as you get your second meetings in with your vendors, then you get to stop and focus on the fun parts.
Yeah, and that's when I tell them you've got grease on your shoes. We're going to slide into wedding day. And that's when that email goes out from me to the bridal party and the vendor team that says, hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the wedding planner. Here's my contact information. You're going to be getting a timeline from me soon. I'm going to ask from this point moving forward that you contact me directly. Let's let our bride and groom enjoy the last few weeks leading up to wedding planning. And that's when having a planner, and I know I say this all the time, really, really, really is helpful because any questions a vendor or even a member of the bridal party has, those questions are going to come to me.
Okay, so let's recap just a little bit for those out there who might not have a wedding planner. Here's what I've heard. Communication is key. Your appointments, getting them set originally and getting those vendors booked is a must. Your follow-up appointments, whether it be an in-person meeting or a telephone conversation, however that needs to happen, making sure your bridal party knows what's up, what the deal is, here's what's happening, this, that, and the other. Because come wedding week, I'm going to let you go in here because you always talk about how important wedding week is, but communication is key on setting the expectations and being on the same page with your vendors, especially if you don't have a wedding planner. Did I get it?
Wedding week should be nothing but fun for that couple. One thing that I forgot to mention a couple minutes ago is part of that month out task, you want to create a floor plan. You want to know where every single table, chair, DJ stand, cake table is going. You want that floor plan created, even if it's just, I'm not a techie person, so most of my floor plans, I draw them. But whatever you have to do. You want to create a floor plan so that you know where everything's going.
You're not being judge-based. It's so you know and your
Yes.
vendors know what's going on.
Well, and then
in
each
your venue.
vendor, when they come to set up, they're not going, if you don't have a wedding planner, they're going to go into hair and makeup and say,
Where am I going?
I don't know where I'm going. Yeah. So you want that floor plan set out and your seating chart. So you want numbers in 2 weeks before your wedding. Once your numbers are in, your seating chart needs to be made. You don't want to go into wedding week without your seating chart made. So require that your RSVPs be in about 3 weeks out. Gives you a week to make your seating chart, and everything is tied up with a bow prior to wedding week.
Now let's talk about wedding week.
Sorry.
Well, before we do that, let's
Okay.
talk about seating charts. Because over the years, the seating chart is one of the most overwhelming things for brides and the moms. So you have your RSVPs 3 weeks out. You take care of that week.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have somebody at the last minute add on, take away. But how many tables do you recommend just to have overflow?
Well, I recommend that there be a table for vendors, which can also be used as guest overflow if need be. And then I recommend one table of 8 seats for, shame on you, you forgot to RSVP, the punishment table, let's call it.
Well, I mean, you take a lot of time, and that's I'm not kidding, that's one of the overwhelming things that they deal with. And sometimes I'm just going to say it, I've always felt like maybe the seating chart is not that important, which is important. It is very important. But sometimes the headaches that you go through with it, if you don't have a wedding planner, that it's a lot of work.
I know we've said this on other episodes. I don't love a seating chart for exactly the reason you said. I think it is the most overwhelming task. And if anything's going to cause a fight between a mother and a bride, that's going to be it.
That.
Yeah. But
It can also bring up other drama amongst the family
Right.
as well.
And that's why it's important to have it.
Who can't sit with who? How far apart do these people need to be? You're opening a whole
I
can
mean,
of
and
worms.
sometimes literally there's somebody in this family and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what she is. I don't know what she did, but ain't nobody wants to sit by her. Like,
As in, why is she
like I have
invited?
just one person at the table, you know? So, like, why is she even coming? Exactly.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
But if you have only as many seats as you do.
Mike, you're over there laughing, and every family has it.
Oh, I know.
But
Yeah.
it's not one select
But
family.
I always want to kind of be like, what's up with this part? Hey, what's the
What's
scoop on
the
her?
inside scoop
Anyway,
here? What did she do to
Hopefully
get
they're
this?
listening to this podcast, so they'll know not to be that person.
exactly.
Maybe.
But
If we've got that much power, we're doing something right.
if you only have as many seats as you do guests, you need a seating chart. Because if someone doesn't, say I don't like Mike and Kristina and I don't want to sit with them. If I don't have an assigned seat and I come in and their table is the only table with an open seat, what do? So you want to have enough extra seating that people can find their own seat, and you want to accept that every table is not going to be full. So like if you have 8 seats at every table, they're not all going to be full. When a seating chart has to happen, when you must have one, is if you only have enough chairs for the number of guests you have, and if you're having a plated meal with a meal selection. Because if, you can choose from beef, salmon, or vegetarian, say, the catering staff has to know at each table how many of each meal they're bringing out. And then you have to have escort cards that say what that person selected.
And
So you have to have a seating chart with a plated meal, no exception.
And the reason that we're talking about seating charts, because it can be so overwhelming and it can cause additional
But
stress.
Number one thing.
If you're going to do one, it needs to be done 2 weeks out.
Well, and we touched on a little bit of the family drama that can happen. There's always tends to be somebody that it's always not about the bride and groom, try to make it more about themselves. As we wrap up this episode, what advice can you give for trying not to get caught up in that to where it makes it even more stressful.
Remove yourself from it. Just don't talk to those people the week of your wedding.
Don't engage in it.
Don't engage. Just remove yourself from it. If you have a wedding planner, I joke, like we joke about Aunt Betty and that kind of stuff, but if you only knew some of the things that had been shared with me that, are between myself and my client that I handle so they don't have to.
And we talked about this on past episodes, yes.
I run a lot of interference.
And if you don't have a wedding planner, find someone that
find
can
someone
run
in your
interference for you.
The other
You need it.
thing that I would have that family member do the week of the wedding, if you don't have a wedding planner, is I do a 48, sometimes 72-hour vendor check-in. I probably drive vendors crazy, to be honest. Mike might say that I do, but even though we've had our month out meeting, and even though I've sent the timeline, if you have a Saturday wedding, I recommend starting on Wednesday, maybe divide it up between Wednesday and Thursday, call with your voice, not an email, not a text message, call each vendor. Say, hey, getting married on Saturday, just want to make sure we're all set. I have you arriving at this time. I have you coming in this door. This is, our expectation. Just that last check that if there's any problem,
you can address it then.
You can address it then. But I don't recommend the couple doing that. That's your wedding planner's job. But if you don't have a wedding planner, again, a maid of honor, maybe the mom, but I really like for mom to enjoy that week too. And back to the family thing, just remove yourself from it. And honestly, if it's bothering you that bad, that person should not be at your wedding.
Well, I just want to get across to the brides, and I know we've talked about wedding planners. I just want them to know that if you get good responsible help, such as your maid of honor, any of your bridesmaids to help you take some of these responsibilities on, and if you work with them 2 or 3 weeks out, they'll take some of that responsibility for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Back to communication. Ask
with
for the help. Ask your wedding party to get involved. They may not automatically know. This could be their first wedding they've been in. But if you share with them what's overwhelming you, what's stressing you out, what's on your to-do list, that way they can help take some of those pieces off.
I have seen over the years too, the most calm brides are the one that does have people to help them, not just wedding planners, but good bridesmaids. And we've been seen
supportive family
yes. And that kind of thing. Because if you've got somebody to take the load off for you and they've got your back, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
It's automatically built in, kind of a little bit of interference.
The flip side of that pancake, though, is you have to be ready to let that person help you. You have to let go a little bit. I've had people that, they hire me, they pay me, but they're still a nervous wreck, the week of their wedding because they just can't let go of that control. So it's a really fine line.
If I can give any advice to a bride right now, it would be let everybody else that you've hired take control of it. You're going to get more out of that vendor than standing over them and making sure that this and that, and it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Everything doesn't always work out. Weather may change it. The temperature may change it. Somebody may be in an accident on the way to the venue or to the wedding.
There's
a million things that can happen. But at the end of the day, you're still going to get married. You're still going to marry the love of your life. And it may not be exactly the way you planned it at first, but it's still going to happen. So if you can just step back and look at the whole picture and say, is it really that important that the flower girl forgot the flower basket as she's walking down the aisle?
Someone sat in the wrong seat.
Exactly. Somebody sat the wrong seat.
Once again, you're going to let something steal your joy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you
don't let that happen.
And honestly, I can speak from a wedding planner's perspective. My job is to assemble the best team, and I say it all the time, of vendors I can possibly assemble, looking at the event and what it's going to require. So that day, if I stand over that vendor team and I say, Are you sure that speaker's going to work? Are you sure that's loud enough? Mike, are you sure that arch is good? First of all, I'm going to drive them crazy. Second, they've lost their motivation because
They're being micromanaged.
Because I drove them crazy. So my job is to put together the best team of experts I can put together and get out of the way and let them do their jobs. And that's the same for a bride and a groom.
Sharon, what about, do you hear an echo?
Oh my goodness.
That's another throwaway.
Yeah. So
Do you hear that echo?
No, Mike, I do not hear the echo.
The other thing too is, Sharon, even if you don't have a wedding planner, hiring those professionals
And then
that are
let them-
full-time wedding professionals.
You hire them because they're experts.
You
Let
are.
them do their job.
And that helps take the stress off all the way through wedding day to the time you get in your car to leave the event. Because no matter what happens, and there's a likelihood that something is going to happen.
Something will happen.
They're the
It's going to happen.
professionals. They're the professionals that if you use a friend or someone that's trying to help you out with taking your pictures or playing your music, it's a stressful situation a lot of times at weddings, even for the vendors, because there's precise things that happen at certain times, certain things. You take a non-professional and you put them in that environment, and then something goes just a little off, it can go haywire.
Well, and when you have, and I mean, everybody has a budget, and you don't have to have $100,000 budget to have a beautiful wedding, but put your money on those things that are important, and it is your vendor team. Because
It's going to help with your
if
stress.
you have a friend being your DJ or a friend being your florist or your photographer, when something does happen, they're going to come and ask you what to do. And that is
I lost power and I can't play your
Right.
first dance.
That is number
What do I
one,
do?
the thing you don't want.
Well, I know that was another episode we talked about, but that's frienders, and you're probably not going to be friends much longer after that.
Right.
And if you're considering using a friend to be part of your vendor team, I highly encourage you to go back to one of our very first episodes called Frienders, because that will probably put a little perspective on some things to really consider if you want that person to be your friend going forward after your wedding. So, but hopefully this episode has helped provide some tools and tips that you can use along the way in your planning to take away some of that stress, anxiety, and overwhelming feeling. Because at the end of the day, you're planning such an important part of your life. You want to be able to enjoy it.
It's supposed to be fun.
And just remind yourself why you're there.
And at the end of the day, you are going to say I do, and you are going to be married.
That's exactly right.
So hopefully you all found this helpful. Make sure to check out our website. If you want to catch our episode recording, you can do so on YouTube. Until next time, everyone stay safe.